Pleasure begins. So apologies to those of you who heard a little bit of this story already in Morning Minion. I was invited to take part in an interfaith pride celebration earlier this week, held with a whole slew of churches at Beth Emeth. And I had the great fortune of meeting and connecting with a Universalist Unitarian minister who identified as pagan, who told me that they very, very much enjoyed synagogue, more so than Unitarian services. So why is that? And they said, well, because I don't understand a word. I don't understand a word of the Hebrew. What a commentary. And that takes us to this week's Torah portion. Howard and I were talking last night. You were listening to a podcast, is that right? He was listening to a podcast about this whole episode of Moses striking the rock. And Howard, what conclusion did you come to about this whole episode, about Moses striking the rock?
Well, I think that it's reality.
It's reality, okay.
It's reality because, like when I was a kid, we used to watch Lone Ranger, and he always said, "Hi, Silver," and drove away. He never got old. We get old, and the end isn't as sweet as we think it should be. And there's a time when you have to realize that you have to step down.
Wow.
And I remember I was on the board of directors of the Alumni Association, and they were talking about morality or something, and I said something, and the president and the other people there were young enough to be my sons, and they said, "How would we do things differently now?" And that's the way the world is. And Moses didn't realize that it's time to step down.
One of those interpretations and drashas that, as my rabbi of blessed memory, Steve Sager, used to say, so rich it has caloric content, so rich it is fattening, in point of fact. But like the Lone Ranger, he says, hi-ho silver, rides off into the sunset, but he doesn't age. But the rest of us do. And the world changes. And maybe there's a commentary here about the world changing and it being time to move forward. I appreciated Rabbi Starr's drasha as well about a God-informed or under-informed, as it turns out, as it relates to human trauma. I had not heard that one before, so thank you for that offering. Friends, who else wants to explain this one? Because on the face of it, God says, speak to this rock, water will come out. Moses goes and hits the rock twice. Water comes out, and God then says, now you don't get to go to the promised land. Josh.
Sounds like a setup to me.
Sounds like a setup. Oh, okay. I didn't know we were going to go in this direction.
Maybe.
Conspiracy abounds.
But like Howard said, I mean,
Yeah.
it's clearly time for Moshe to retire.
Okay.
And so I guess God needed a pretext.
Oh, so this is a
God
pretext.
said to Moses, good job. Here's your gold watch.
Yeah.
And
Right off into the sunset. Hi-ho silver, right? Yeah. Which more or less is a little bit of what happens when the Torah ends and it says, never again would there arise a prophet like Moshe who spoke to God panim el panim, face to face. Nobody else gets to do that. Sort of the version. But at the same time, Moses is buried outside of the land of Israel. Doesn't make it to the promised land. Did I see a hand over here? Yeah, go ahead. Both are Gabayim.
It's wrong to say this is the way things have always been done, and to say this is how we do things now. I think it's up to the individual and how they want to do things. And unfortunately for Moses, his judge was God. But nothing was said of it. This is how it's done, or this is how it was done. It just he did it. So,
Jeff respectfully pushes back against that idea of this is how we always did it. Nope, this is how it's done now. No, this is how Moses is going to do it.
Right.
However, the one calling the balls and strikes here is the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Yeah.
Even after replay.
That even after replay. That's right. Alan.
I've generally thought about this passage as indicating that Moses was becoming more brittle in old age, and his frustrations got the better of him, and that is an attribute that should signal to somebody that they don't have the same bandwidth. at the same time, for the first time, I thought about this today, that when my children were small and I was teaching them about what's safe and right to do in certain situations and whatnot, when they could be hurt if they did it the wrong way, if it's look but don't touch, or touch but don't push, or something like that, I would say it to them more than once. If there were going to be certainly this level of consequence, say it to them more than once, and maybe crouch down with my hands around their midsection so they can't dart out and do the wrong thing. Maybe Hashem did this in the background and we just don't.
A lovely parental midrash there. I love that, Alan. Thank you. Interestingly, none of you actually pulled. Yeah, go ahead, August. Well, I was going to say none of you, but we'll see if August does it. And then Kathy.
It's just because historically the staff has been involved in things.
Yes!
The snake and then the splitting of the Red Sea.
She proves me wrong. Yeah, go ahead.
And then now we have, Moses being like, oh yeah, the staff. And then God's like, no.
Okay, so August takes us in a very interesting direction. Hang on just a sec. I'm going to read this right here for you all to catch, because it's really interesting here. Where is it? The community went without water. The people quarreled with Moses, if only blah, blah, blah. Moses and Aaron came away. The presence of the Lord appeared to Moses and Aaron. Lord spoke to Moses, saying, you and your brother Aaron take the rod and assemble the community before their very eyes. Order the rock to yield its water. Okay. August points out something really interesting here, which is the role of the rod. Medieval commentators here, Rashbam makes the point that, I was about to say nobody tagged what the medieval commentators tagged, but actually August kind of did here, so here we are. Rashbam points out, well, every other place where Moses is supposed to do something with the rod, something kinetic is going on. This is this bizarre experience in that Moses is supposed to take the rod, but not split the seas. There's nothing physical about it, actually. You're supposed to take the rod, but then talk. It's almost setting up Moses in this way. So that kind of coincides with Josh's reading about maybe this is something of a pretext for forcing Moses out, actually. Kathy had a hand, and then Diane. I'm glad we're having fun with this one today.
Well,
yeah.
God never specifically told Moses that he was going to go into the promised land.
Okay, God never told Moses that explicitly.
He said you'll lead the people there.
Yeah, you'll lead the people there, but you yourself.
Right. So now, when Moses strikes the rock, God is reminding Moses what he said in the first place. Because I think there come a point where Moses is like, this is my job, I got to do this, it's all on me. Aaron, Joshua, you're going to be next, but I got to show you how this is done. And like was previously brought out, times change. But it was a reminder to Moses at that point, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, so this is the challenge with this, is it says, Moses may not be actually supposed to do that. So what if we de-link the rock episode from Moses and the Promised Land thing? Well, the problem is, then we run into verse 12. Lord says to Moses and Aaron, because you did not trust me enough to affirm my sanctity in the sight of the Israelites, therefore you will not lead them into the land that I have given them. So you could parse that he gets the land that lead them right up to, but God makes it sound pretty conditional here. It's a tricky one. Diane, and then I'm going to talk a little bit.
So to build on what August said,
Yeah.
bring some other things in, the rod was the symbol of power.
Okay, rod is symbol of power.
And if it's time to retire, you turn in your gavel.
Turning in the symbol of power, okay. And so maybe even here a misuse of the very symbol of power.
It's like, you're not doing this anymore.
Yeah, very good. There are also some really great, I'm going to add a couple more from the medieval commentators. I really like this one, that in much earlier in the Torah, in Exodus, there is, in fact, a rock that issues water. And so Rashi asks, is this supposed to be the same rock? And are they getting the rock wrong? Ibn Ezra says in response to that, the fact that it says its water has misled many into thinking the rock must have been the same one Moses got in Exodus 17:6, but these people are stupid. Ibn Ezra is really not pulling his punches here. That rock was at Horeb, whereas this one is at Kadesh on the border of Edom. So not so much. Ibn Ezra just calling it like he sees it. Rashi continues with, however, when Moses says to the people, "Listen, you rebels, shall we get water out of this rock for you?" He asks what sounds like a rhetorical question, but Rashi wants to suggest, what if he actually doesn't know which rock it is? What if he looks and there's 20 rocks in front of him? And he said, well, let's try this one over here. And it's a whole, like, it kind of sounds like almost like a Monty Python kind of thing to me, actually. Like, yeah, it was rock. Where did I set the rock? It was right. Uh-oh. You know, that kind of thing to it. It's an amazing thing. And then Rashi also follows it, talking about that reeve, that word, where Moses refers to them as morim, rebels. Rashi also takes it to say morim are also teachers. So, Rashi is saying that Moses is basically saying to these people, hey, watch this, you bunch of geniuses, you bunch of brain trusts, saying teachers facetiously, sarcastically, you bunch of idiots, but instead he calls them teachers as a way of insulting them. Either way, it's not nice. It's funny, but it's not nice. However, where I will land in some of this, Nachmanides, not Maimonides, but Nachmanides, gives us this entire page of tiny print. Thank you for gazing over here, Mitch, trying to see it on this one. He goes through every single argument that they've seen within the medieval world. He didn't get to some of yours, the Moses and trauma-informed one and whatever, and he cuts them all to ribbons. He says at the end of it, the truth is, this is actually one of the great mysteries of the Torah, maybe the greatest. Why it was that this thing unfolds the way it does doesn't totally make sense, and we get into all kinds of gymnastics and Monty Python sketches and trauma-informed God and all kind of amazing things to try and parse this thing that doesn't totally make sense. And there's a piece of me that appreciates that Nachmanides names it, whereas all the other commentators are all telling you, oh, it's because he couldn't find the right rock, or oh, it's because the people were stealing. Like, amazing commentary here. Oh, it's the same rock as from Exodus chapter 17, or stuff that just doesn't make sense. And Ibn Ezra then says, well, you're an idiot for thinking that, and whatever. The stuff, a lot of it does not compute. And so I appreciate Nachmanides actually just saying aloud what the Universalist, Unitarian, pagan minister said. I like it because I don't understand it. I like it because I don't understand it. That's a bold statement in a post-Haskalah Jewish context and world in which we want to intellectualize all the things and we want to make sense of all the stuff and whatever. And this is on top of and after the Mefarshim doing all of their dance and gymnastics in the medieval era and the rabbis and Talmud, the longest work in the ancient world, trying to fit the square peg in the round hole. Nachmanides says, I don't get it. And that's cool. Rabbi.
I'm wondering, in all those pages that
Yeah.
you clearly went through there, does Nachmanides then go back and say, hey, this is just like, the parsha aduma, meaning the heifer that is like the epitome mitzvah of we don't understand why, it just is?
That is a fascinating question. Do we go back to the parsha aduma, which is the red heifer a couple of pages earlier, this bizarro piece, like the hyssop and the sprinkling of the stuff in its sort of magical valence that Rabbi Starr mentioned before? It just is. That's how it goes. You don't get to intellectualize it or make sense of it mechanically speaking. It just is. No, Nachmanides doesn't do that, actually, although that is a beautiful and rich place to take it, and I will look forward to when you give us that drosh, Rabbi. That one sounds awesome, actually. I will stay tuned. Rabbi Elise Kramer will be bringing that one to the forefront at some point in the undefined future. 3 years from now. All right, cool. Gosh, we have a lot of hands here, so that must mean something's going right. I was going to wind it up, but let's keep going then. Lori, and then Mitch, and then Alan.
It's not just a question.
Yeah.
So we have Moses and Aaron who hear what God says.
Yes.
And then Moses gets told he's not going. And then later on, we have Aaron going up to the mountain and dying, and it's like, is there any, you don't have to answer it now, but is there any commentary that marries those two together with that, or is it just old age for Aaron?
One of these Mefarshim does actually talk about Moses, or not Aaron, and Aaron's sin, or really lack thereof, and why Aaron gets lumped together in this. Hananel, maybe? We'll come back to it sometime. I don't want to pull that thread too firmly in this space, but yeah. Mitch and then Alan, and then we're going to wrap.
The question that I think is raised is, why did it work?
Why did it work?
Right? I mean, Hashem tells Moses what to do. Moses does something different. And Moshe's action is, by the way, much more oriented towards the people than it is to obey God, right? You can't have 600,000 people standing around and saying, what did he say, what did he say, right? But to actually be able to witness him use the famous rod and smack a rock and, hey, that worked before, worked again. And then you have to say to yourself, if this is going to be the consequence, why did it work?
Glad you asked that, and so is Rashbam, who answers that very question.
Excellent.
If this was the wrong thing to do, why then did the water come out? And Rashbam says, because the people still need this linkage and bridge from God to Moses to the people. That if you sever that linkage where Moses thinks he's going to do the right thing and save the people with this water, because keep in mind, again, this is everybody who is dying of thirst, essentially. This isn't an idle sort of like, can we have, I don't know, prizes from the claw machine kind of thing. No, that this is about their survival. And so if Moses is not, in fact, granted the means of delivering the people, the risk here is then to sever the relationship, the linkage between the people and God right at the edge, at a very delicate moment, which is that of Moses' retirement, which is as Moses going as far as he can. So you have to watch out for the linkage being severed entirely. Alan, and then we're going to... you have one too? All right, cool.
I'm deeply troubled by the conclusion that this is one of these things that we just can't explain.
Yeah.
The red heifer is sort of an abstract, not abstract, but a symbolic ritual. The sprinkling of hyssop and whatever else you described, symbolic ritual. This is a human interaction that's basically saying that where a very bad thing happens to a very good person. Right?
Yeah.
To do very good people. And one of the foundational questions we ask is, why do bad things happen to good people? This is God choosing explicitly, not creating a world in which bad things happen to good people, but deciding that a bad thing is going to happen to a good person for sort of an inexplicable reason. I find that implication of Nachmanides' conclusion to be very troubling.
I will play with an inversion of that idea of this. It is troubling for God to do a bad thing to a good person without a reason or justification or explanation. And so what I might say about that, and this is, you're hearing me now, none of the Mefarshim. In the same way that we as Jews do not expect human perfection because we don't have a Jesus figure, we have Moses, who is deeply flawed and who gets it wrong and screws stuff up. And Moses happens to also be the greatest prophet who would ever live, speaks to God panim el panim, face to face. Well, it absolves the rest of us from walking too far down the road of thinking that we need to be perfect. And I want to illustrate this and draw that same linkage. If we, in fact, ourselves are living virtuous lives and something bad happens to us, can we see ourselves in Moses, this prophet and the one who was close to God? That it's not that Moses is banished from Moses' closeness to God. Moses remains close to God, just doesn't get to enter the promised land. Can we see within that relationship some of our own proximity to holiness, even in the midst of the impossibility of our goodness with our brokenness when bad things happen to good people? So I'm just sort of playing and inverting with some of that same idea. There is a piece of Talmud that speaks to exactly that question that you are asking, and perhaps we'll learn it sometime. But I will put a pin in it for there. One last. And then I promise we'll keep going. Yeah, go ahead.
the one thing that I observed is Moses and Aaron
Yeah.
were walking next to God. God is perfect.
Yeah.
When you work with someone that's perfect, you've got to do what they say.
Mm.
You're going to be held accountable if you don't do what they say. God told him specifically to talk, to speak with love. And he did not agree with Moses deriding people, calling them wicked names. Well, I mean, that's God's business. He raised these people out. He had everything invested in them, and now you're going to tell him they're rebels, it's a waste of time. He didn't agree with that. Moses was walking next to perfection, and that's dangerous. And you've got to do what you're told. And had they spoken to the rock, say you can redo this whole thing over and go back in history and speak to the rock like you're supposed to, and 1 million gallons of water starts coming out of the side of that mountain. That's what it would take to feed all these people. And they were, like you say, they were on the point of starvation. You have a right to be upset if you're starving in Death Valley. You know, you have a right to be upset. And so Moses was walking next to perfection, and that's why God dealt with him severely.
One of the Mefarshim actually does make the point. I don't remember which one, and I can't read this size print this quickly enough to figure it out. One of them does make the point that you just made, not the one about walking next to perfection, but actually the one about, who are you, Moses, to insult God's people? That maybe that's bad news as well. But frankly, yes, if you're going to walk next to perfection, you better get it right. All right, one more. Go ahead.
Wondering if it's just a message that it's not about you.
Everyone hear that? What if it's the message, it's not about you?
So they were brought there and can't go forward. But everyone has to learn how to go forward, how to survive and go to the promised land.
It's not about you, and yet on your own you have to go to the promised land and put one foot in front of the other with a degree of insecurity and perhaps missing that leader figure who made everything just right and whatever. It's about existing in the unknown, in the breach, so to speak.
We're losing people young that you love. It's
Losing people young.
You always say, like, why? And there are reasons you learn things from that.
Friends, I love this piece of Torah. Thank you for that, by the way. Because of that. This is why I love this piece of Torah so much, is because I made this metaphor the other day that we don't actually historically, scholarly, archaeologically, sociologically, anthropologically know why we break the glass at the wedding. It actually is so ancient that we don't have the original explanation of it. And so what do? Make stuff up. Thank you, Rabbi. We fill the space. We backfill with interpretations and exegesis and other reasons. We sort of fill that space up, but we intellectually can't pin down and say this is the exact reason why. Mishnah has an idea about it, but a lot of scholarship thinks that actually it predates Mishnah's idea about it as well, and so ultimately the reason may not be knowable. I love this piece because it invites all of these different backfilling explanations to try and get at what this is. And, as Nachmanides says, the truth is, he says, it's one of the greatest mysteries. We have explanations for you. If you need one of them to take with you, there are some really brilliant ones here. I happen to think the trauma, uninformed God is one of the more brilliant ones I have heard in a long time. And then we have some others from some of these guys about it was the wrong rock or he lost it in a pile of rocks or whatever, the Monty Python kind of thing. But then we have Nachmanides who says, this is one of the great mysteries. And actually to line it up with bad things happening to good people, that too, and that piece of, dare I say, theodicy, the problem of evil in the world, winds up pulling that thread into a profound philosophical place. And and I told Howard this last night when we were talking about it, I'm not going to answer it. Why? Because I'm going to go with Nachmanides here because I appreciate where he went. I would not ask for and could not ask for a better group of fellow travelers in trying to interrogate and think through the question and reflect on it into what it means to live in holy space and with God and Shabbat. But ultimately, some things are part of the mystery, capital M, yet another name we have for God. I'm going to leave it with Nachmanides for today, and as I promised to Howard, I'm not going to understand this one today, but we'll come back to it. I'll look forward to Rabbi Elise's drosh on this one, maybe in a few years. Maybe she'll answer it. Maybe it'll be for generations 500 years in the future, 1,000 years in the future to answer it, but we'll leave it unanswered for just right this second. Shabbat Shalom.